Namastu. Which means the divinity within me bows to the divinity within you. My name is Pastor Dr. Cleveland W. Enius III, also known as KaHun, Anku, Sarah. As always, we're grateful for those who have joined us via Facebook today, or through whichever social media platform you may see this message. We encourage you to come to the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah in Nassau, Bahamas, each Sunday for our weekly Sunday services. We're located off of Wolf Road on Woods Alley, and we would be happy to meet you face to face. For those of you who did make it to Woods Alley off of Wolf Road, again we say Namastu. How's everybody doing today? Awesome. Beautiful, man. Listen, today we continue with a message that we started last week entitled, Does Religion Remove Racism? Does religion remove racism? Of course, it's a no-brainer that the religion that we have come to know as religion does not remove the system of racism, white supremacy. Last week we talked about the fact that racism, white supremacy, oftentimes when we use that phrase, naturally, as I originally thought too, you think only the European. You think only the so-called white man, woman, and child. But we understand by way of atonism that this racism, white supremacy is ultimately, there are four types of this racism, white supremacy. Last week we talked about the Aryan, Hindu form of racism, white supremacy, the Indo-Oriental form of racism, white supremacy, the Pale Arab or Indo-Arab form of racism, white supremacy, and of course the Indo-European, the Greco-Roman form of racism, white supremacy. And this is important for us to talk about because oftentimes race is taboo. We don't like to talk about it for whatever reason. We know it's a touchy subject because anytime you start to talk about race, you are talking about who people truly are at the core. And so we want to be clear as the Holy Coptic Church about, number one, why this is important. Because we understand that because religion as we have come to know it has not successfully moved racism, white supremacy, then that clearly is one of the purposes of our true religious identity. Not so much to focus on racism, white supremacy, but to establish our true religious identity, which ultimately is going to put us in a position where we're not dependent on racism, white supremacy. Amen? And so we talk about one-sided, adverse, or wrong-sided racism. Please write that down. One-sided, adverse, or one-sided racism or wrong-sided racism. So we're going to now dissect a little bit better than we did last week, or go a little bit further than we went last week, into this reality of what this racism, white supremacy is, and why it hasn't been removed, and why people look at us when we talk and we present on the radio, on the television, or you talking to your family, or you propagating on the streets, or being an atonist in your every day, and you start to talk to people, and I know I've heard it, but maybe some of you have also heard it. Do people ask you, or do people say to you, you don't sound Christian? Has that ever happened to you before? Yeah. You telling people about your church, and you telling people about what you believe, and you explaining maybe your kufa or the symbol, or the Nazarene seal, and you talking and you think you got them, and they're like, yeah, I hear you, but
you believe in God.
You believe in God.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, sound okay. That just look nice. It's all good, but do you believe in God? Are you really really Christian?
Jesus is Savior.
Is Jesus your Savior? Yeah. And what we have to be willing to say to people is, the reason we don't sound Christian is because we're not only Christian. We're true Christians, number one, and a true Christian is also a true Hebrew, or one who is of the three groups of 12 royal tribes: Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani, the Old Testament, good old time religion of Abraham. We're those people as well. But we are also, as you talk about these three groups of 12 royal tribes, when we talk about Ishmael, we're talking about true Islam. This reality of having a way of life that ultimately unifies the monotheistic teachings as we've been taught of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so what one-sided adverse or wrong-sided racism does is it only cares about melanin recessive people. It only cares about melanin recessive people. And what that does for us as a people is it puts us in a frame of mind whereby we see this care of melanin recessive people as that which we want to seek or that which we want to ascribe to, because the dominant culture is leading this effort of only caring about melanin recessive people. So what begins to happen amongst a people who have been abused, who have been neglected, who have been mistaught, who have been malnourished, who have been subjugated, who have been colonized, and you're trying to get yourself out of this colonization, is you begin to look at people who you can identify with that you want to be like. So how many people like nice houses? 200, right? How many people like nice cars? How many people wouldn't mind having a boat or a plane or a helicopter, right? We wouldn't mind these, and there's nothing wrong with having any of these things. But we live in a society where you have a group of people who actually have these things, and then you have another group of people who can only look at people who have those things. You really, many people, it's difficult to even own a house, much less a nice house, but just to own a house. And this is being purposely done. They want you to pay rent for the rest of your life. You understand? They even want you now to rent car for the rest of your life. All these rentals running around on the streets in Nassau. And the reason why it continues to happen is because we have a system that ultimately only cares about melanin recessive people.
Then it's time for us to just put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes. Enough.
So all of the countries that Eric Prince is now saying they can't run their country, it's because we, along with the French and the British, destabilized those countries, destabilized the leadership by taking the leadership out, paid for overthrows and coups in those countries, and now we trying to say, I don't know how y'all don't know how to act, I don't know how y'all don't know how to run your own country, when we the ones who actually created the very destabilization that we're talking about today.
We live in a system, any life with melanin has no value. Any life with melanin has no value. So this is why in our efforts to rule ourselves, we always find ourselves in a position where we're being led by those who don't look like us. I was watching Buddy Hield the other night. I'm so proud of him, you know. He's doing so very well. And he's now playing with the Philadelphia 76ers, you know, Bohemians. We see the Lakers or Sixers. We're Sixers now, you see. But you know, we were Sixers from Dr. J time, but now, you know, we got a reason to be a Sixer again, you know. And, you know, they praising Buddy because he started making an impact right away. And then, you know, he spoke, and then the coaches spoke. And I said, that's so interesting that so many of the coaches don't look like the players. That's the NBA and the NFL, sports where you have predominantly black players. Now in hockey, everybody looks alike for the most part. You have some black players, but predominantly white league, right? You even watch Shaq and Ernie and what's the other basketball player who Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley and them. And I'm like, well, why is Ernie there? You know, what did Ernie do to have him sitting with all-star players, Hall of Fame players? And I'm using sports because I watch sports. I mean, I can find some other analogies, but I think most people will follow along. You have Skip Bayless, who was with Shannon Sharp, and he never really played in a professional way, but he's an authority. Yes. You have people who, in every stage of rel cell web, in religion, in economics, and labor, when you get to the creme de la creme, when you get to the expert of experts, it's usually someone who doesn't look like us. And if it is somebody who looks like us, it's somebody who doesn't think like us. You understand? And that's purposely being done. You understand? Our way of life is a means to creating a world for ourselves.